be also interactive, and if folks have any questions or stuff to share, we'll do that as well. But Frank, how much time do I have?
That's how much you like.
Well, I'm sure everybody here would strongly disagree with that.
I'm not allowed to pay overtime. So.
Okay, there you go. It's okay, and I also have to get back to work. As I was telling Eric, it wasn't a very long walk to get here because I just work right up the street at 855 Battery, so at the CBS building. And I just wanted to acknowledge my intern, Jordan, who is here, and he's periscoping it, but he's just going to have me on it and not all of you, so in terms of privacy, etc., in this new age of social media. So I just wanted to, I'm honored, and I met Frank, and I was honored that he asked me to come here and participate in Pride Month, which I actually rarely do things specifically in Pride. I treat Pride like I treat Black History Month because I am an out lesbian 12 months out of the year, as I am an out African American, so I try to be prideful of both my race and my sexual orientation all the time, but nonetheless, I'm honored to be here today. So I just want to, you all have my bio, which talks about me, and you know what my job that I get paid for, that I actually really enjoy doing, is, as Eric mentioned, I'm the Director of Communications and Public Affairs over at CBS. And what that means, Director of Communications means that I do PR for the station, which is mainly media relations. When anything happens that we want the media to know about or we don't want the media to know about. And the media for us at a TV station is usually print media. So if I pitch stuff about what's happening at our stations, and our stations are TV stations and radio stations. So the TV stations are KPIX, which is Channel 5, and KBCW, which, does anybody know the jingle? Does anybody watch TV? Channel 44? Come on, someone's got to sing it. 44 cable 12. Come on. Okay. That's how we know. So people say, what the heck is a CW station? 44 cable 12. So those are our two television stations in the building, and we have 4 radio stations also owned by CBS in the building. KCBS Radio, which is all news radio, Alice Radio, Live 105, and 997 Now. None of which are in my demographics, but no, probably KCBS is, but all the others skew much younger than I am. But I'm introduced to a lot of music that my young children don't introduce me to, so that's a good thing. So that's my job. I also produce and executive produce 3 television shows, some of which you may have seen. One is called Bay Sunday. They're all talk shows / public affairs shows, and that comes on Sunday morning at 5:30 a.m. I'm sure you all have your DVRs set for that and replaying it later. We also have a Facebook page where we archive things as well. I executive produce another public affairs show on 44 Cable 12 that's called Bay Area Focus. And then I also produce, and that comes on, it just changed time, it comes on at 11 a.m. on Sundays. And then the 3rd Sunday of every month, I produce a show called Black Renaissance that talks about what's happening in the African American communities in the Bay Area and beyond. So I love my job. I have the privilege of being able to work both in news and somewhat in entertainment, and get a lot of perks. I go to a lot of plays. Eric and I were talking about that, and that also reflects a lot of the writing that I do. I go to a lot of sporting events. I, however, was not able to go to, I'm always interested when people have that ring, Frank. I thought about that, but, or is that a special ring for someone, or is that just your generic ring? Okay, interesting, okay. Or people who just keep the regular one, but so I get to do a lot of things. I was saying that I get to go to a lot of sporting events. I was unable to, much to my dismay, to go to any of the finals, but I got to go to the playoffs for the Warriors, and that was a blast because I'm a big Warriors fan. And while we're speaking of Pride Month, the parade is going to be on Sunday, the 28th, and Rick Welts, who is the COO of the Warriors, is the Grand Marshal, and he was the first openly gay front office person in the NBA. Just a, great accomplishment, and out at a time when it was not okay to be out in sports. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit, or read a couple of pieces that I have done. So that's my job that I work. I'm also a mother. I have 2 young children. Well, one, my daughter is 14 years old, going on, I'd say 28 or something like that. So, and as much as people, before I became a parent, talked to me about raising kids and the terrible twos, somehow I missed the teenage period. So have you gone through that? Okay. So I'm not prepared for that at all, and dealing with a teenage girl, and she says things to me that I would have never said to my mother, and had I said to my mother, I would not be alive today, and that's not a joke, okay? So I didn't grow up in California, and there weren't all these protective laws and stuff. But she's saved, which is good for me. But I think these things, and I think, wow, this is incredible. But she is lovely. But she is obsessed with. Not New Kids on the Block. Let's see, what's the... One Direction. One Direction! I'm sorry, how could I forget? How could I forget? Because she has changed her Instagram name to her last name to Styles. So she is no longer Akilah Monifa, which is her last name. She is Izzy Styles. And she has picked out her wedding dress and the names of all 6 of the children that she's going to have with Harry Styles. So, I can't relate. And I also have a son who is 11, going to be 12, and right now he hasn't reached those teen years, so things are going okay. In addition to my full-time job, I am a writer / blogger / author, and that is my passion, and that's really what I wanted to talk about in terms of pride, that we all should be making connections and finding out what your passion is. If your passion coincides with what you are getting paid to do, that's great. And if it doesn't, you still need to pursue your passion with everything. So I wake up really every day thinking about my passion and what I can do to attain that in every little step. And I think my writing really informs it. I was talking to Eric, I had looked up some things that I had written and said, I saw you went to a play and you wrote about it. And I said, yeah, because I went to see Annie, which I thought, there's no way I'm going to like Annie. I know Annie. This is just, and I loved it. And I found something within it to have passion about. And it can be something simple for me. I find that my life is very exciting, but I also like routine things. Doing things in the same way, and the predictability. Turns out that Frank and I take the same bus home, same stop, which is really funny. And I guess in terms of if I actually I wasn't being connected. And I got the next day I got a note from him saying, "Did I see you on the NX bus?" And I'm like, "Yes, you did, but what was I doing?" And I was busy on my phone and not paying attention. So since then, I've really thought about that. It's like, make connections and take a moment in everything that you do and look around and see who you can see. It doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to talk to him the whole ride home, but at least make some sort of connection with him. And things like that. So that's how my life is really informed about connections. So I started. Let's see. I had my full-time job, and my background is actually I went to law school, and after working at legal services for a number of years, I then taught in law school. And then I had the pivotal moment in my life when I was turning 40 and decided I needed to examine what I really wanted to do in my life when I grew up. So one of those moments. So I had the privilege then of the person that I was then living with said, go away, go on a little retreat, a little weekend retreat, and figure out what you want to do with your life. So at that point, I took journals that I had written when I was 19 years old that I had never touched or read. And the only thing that I had talked about doing was writing. And I wanted to be a combination of, I don't know, this is of course dating myself because I am dateable. Nikki Giovanni, do people know Nikki Giovanni? is a poet. You'll Google her later. Nikki Giovanni. And now I can't remember the name of the other person I wanted to be, but Lauren Bacall played her in a movie. She was a writer. Both of them were writers. Nikki Giovanni is still alive as a poet, and this other woman was a writer. And at least how she was portrayed by Lauren Bacall in a movie. Has anybody ever even heard of Lauren Bacall, first of all? Yes. Thank you. Okay. So Lauren Bacall played this writer in a movie, and I don't know if she was like this in real life, but she was, you know, tough. She drank bourbon straight and smoked cigarettes, none of which I knew how to do, but this is how I thought this is what I thought a writer should be.
Lillian Hellman?
Lillian Hellman, thank you very much. They're going to have to come a high five for that one. Thank you. Lillian Hellman. So I wanted to be a cross between Lillian Hellman and Nikki Giovanni. So I don't know whether Lillian Hellman was like this in real life, but when Lauren Bacall played her, like I said, hard drinking, hard smoking, and who was she married to? So like Humphrey Bogart or something, or not? Okay, Lauren Bacall was. Okay. Lillian Hellman was married to a famous writer as well. There you go. Okay. What? Thank you. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So that's what I wanted, you know, and you know, media has always been a big part of my life. Movies and, you know, television and those sorts of things. My main fantasy growing up was that I wanted to, on the Donna Reed show. Now, who remembers the Donna Reed show? Yes, okay. You know, I wanted Donna Reed to be my mother and Carl Betts to be my father. And, you know, I just thought that was the best show ever, the Model Family. So 40 years old. I'm a lawyer. I'm a law professor. Then I read this. It's like, where did I lose this? Why? You know, I went to law school basically because I watched a lot of Perry Mason, and my family said, you speak well, so you should be a lawyer. And I needed a job, so I did that. So now I'm 40, and I'm like, okay, what do I want to do? When I was 19, I said I wanted to write. I wanted to be Lillian Hellman and Nikki Giovanni. So I had the luxury then, and this was like probably the best gift that anyone has ever given me. My then partner said, quit your job and pursue your writing for 1 year. Don't worry, I will support you. And that 1 year ended up into 2 years, and I had the luxury, and then I also didn't know, well, what do I want to write? I knew that I did not want to write a novel, even though a lot of people talked about that. So what I did was I just read books about what, you know, if you want to be a writer, what should you do? And one of the things that I read said that if you want to write, you should try as many different types of writing as possible, but you should try to break into things that are easy to break into. One of the things that they suggested was easy to break into was doing book reviews. So I started doing book reviews for the Bay Times, which is still around. And I just, you know, got the newspaper, saw who the publisher was. Turns out I knew the publisher, called her up and said, I would like to do, and this is long before the internet, or at least as it is now, I'd like to do book reviews. And I wanted to do book reviews so I could have my own byline. So started doing book reviews, and then I started, even though I didn't have to work, I worked for a place called Media Alliance because they would do, they did training of people around writing. So I took all sorts of classes, and I enrolled in this program called BAMWalk, Bay Area Mentorship for Reporters of Color. And they had individual training on newspaper writing, on magazine writing, on photojournalism. And these were little 2-hour blocks where they'd bring in somebody from the Chronicle who was a photojournalist, who would just give you an overview of what it was like to do that sort of work. And probably the most pivotal thing that happened during that time is in one of those 2-hour blocks, Brenda Payton, who then worked for the Oakland Tribune, was an opinion editorial writer. And she came in and did a 2-hour presentation about what it took to write opinion editorials. And I thought, this is great. This is what I want to do. This is the writing that I want to do. And at the same time, Media Alliance had actually a little ad that for different writers, and the Progressive Media Project said that they were looking for opinion editorial writers. So I'm like, great. So I write them and I say, I want to write op-eds for you. And they're like, great, send us 2 published pieces and an idea for something. I'm like, oh, there's the rub. I have no published pieces at all. So I had plenty of ideas, but nothing published. So one of the other people that I met in this training program was Tim Redman, who was the then publisher of the now defunct not San Francisco Weekly. It was a weekly. Bay Guardian. San Francisco Bay Guardian. Thank you. And so I said to Tim, I want to write an op-ed because I need a published op-ed. So he said, come by my office. We'll brainstorm some ideas. So I did, and ended up writing a piece, my first published piece in 1997 that was in the San Francisco Bay Guardian with my byline. And the piece was about, this is 1997, then there was a proposal to have a new football stadium, but the proposal was that the public would pay for it. So there was a referendum on the ballot, and folks got to vote on it. So I think, and this is the thing I will say about writing, the best thing about writing is to have a great editor, because I'm sure that I didn't come up with this line on my own, but it was edited and Tim Redman helped with this. And it's I think one of the best lines ever in any of my published pieces. And the line was, in rebuttal to this referendum for public money for a new stadium, Mayor Brown was then mayor, and Eddie DiBartolo was the then owner of the 49ers. So I said that I would tell Willie Brown and Eddie DiBartolo to take their balls and get out of San Francisco. Okay, so I know that this is not something that I would normally say, but it makes for a great read, let's put it that way. And it's also very funny because if you watch CBS, the mayor, Willie Brown, works for us now, so I'm able to every now and then, it's like, you know, Mayor Brown, remember when I said that? You know, it's like, yeah, kid, whatever. So that was my first published piece, and then I went on to write, and I still do write for the Progressive Media Project. And so I just wanted to share, and then time for questions if folks have questions, or interrupt me now too. A couple of things that I have written that are really pivotal to me and really define who I am. I mean, I write about a lot of things. I write about race, I write about culture, I write about sexual orientation, I write about sports, things I'm interested in, I write about my children. But the overall thing that I like to write about is transformation and change. And I went through a huge transformation, and I'm going to read this article that tells you about my transformation. This was published last year. Okay, so, and it was on the Huffington Post, where I blog. I have a regular blog. So, and let me just also say that even though my name is my name is Akilah Monifa, my birth name was Elizabeth Ann Thompson, and because now I am the spokesperson for CBS, I write under my birth name so that there's no confusion that I'm representing my viewpoints only, not the spokesperson of CBS. So this one had the byline of Elizabeth Ann Thompson on the Huffington Post blog. August 2011, I was probably at my all-time high weight. I don't know exactly how much I weighed, since I stopped weighing when I reached 389 pounds. I am positive I weighed more than 400 pounds, but I didn't want to know exactly how much over 400 pounds. Currently, I weigh 180 pounds. People ask me the secret of my weight loss. I first acknowledged that I had gastric bypass surgery at Stanford Medical Center in August of 2012. My surgeon created a small pouch at the top of my stomach, and most of the food I ate was bypassed and sent straight to my small intestine. The pouch is the size of a walnut and can only hold an ounce of food. Folks often confuse the various weight loss surgeries with each other and with liposuction. Some folks think having surgery to help you lose weight is cheating or taking the easy way out. For me, at nearly 6 decades, it was about being healthy. And as Al Roker says, anyone can eat their way out of a gastric bypass. Nothing is permanent. Everything takes work and discipline. CNN.com recently featured me in their weekly weight loss series. As to the secrets of my weight loss success, in no particular order of importance, 1, I walk a minimum of 10,000 steps a day. I keep track via my Fitbit device. I do have to add now that I have my beloved Apple Watch. I include this too. I've rocked them all. Currently wearing a Fitbit Flex. I just wear the battery in my pocket. I usually start out with at least a 15-minute walk before my day starts. 2, I don't count calories, but I don't eat the same way I did when I weighed over 400 pounds. I've taken to heart the adage of the definition of crazy, doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result. I eat only small portions of food high in protein, but I eat every few hours. I do eat refined sugar, but not in the quantities I used to. I have a pint of ice cream that has been in my refrigerator for more than a year. Now it's more than 2 years, which is remarkable because, you know, before a half gallon used to be an individual serving size. But I weigh daily. I give myself a 10-pound cushion for the weight loss, and I am below my goal. But if I see myself gaining weight, I step up my fitness game. I belong to 2 gyms. Actually, since this article is written now, I belong to 3. 1 near my office and 1 near my home. And 2 of them are national ones that I use when I travel. If a gym is not available to me, that's not an excuse. I walk outside or inside if the weather doesn't permit. I read a summary of the 4 agreements several times a day. For my fitness goals, the most important is the last agreement. Always do your best. Sometimes my best falls short of 10,000 steps a day, but it is still my best. I don't beat myself up because I haven't always done my 10,000 steps. 7, I listen to inspirational music. It puts me in a better mood and helps me walk more. 8, I drink lots of water. Any other drink is not as healthy and has empty calories usually. 9, I get up before sunrise. 10, I get the proper amount of sleep. For me, it's usually between 5 and 6 hours a day. I do take naps, however. I am so much more happier and healthier than I was before. And then I always end stuff, at this time I ended it with peace and blessings, and now I end all my pieces with blessings, peace, compassion, and love. So I think that this is the one that I think really defines who I am recently. I wanted to read a couple of others, but I wanted to also give folks a chance to ask any questions or have any comments. Nothing? You want me to shut up, or you want me to? Yes.
Have you done any long walks, marathons?
Yeah, I've done. I did the Oakland Running Festival, which was a 5K, and I've done 5K walks. I also did the AIDS Walk, and I'll be doing it again this year if anyone wants to sponsor me. 10K, and that's not much. Running was a big deal. Running the 5K was a huge deal, and I trained for it. I did this, it's a free app, Couch to 5K, and then I'm currently training to run a 10K. I don't know whether I want to do a marathon, or a half marathon, or anything like that. Roberta Gonzalez, who I work with, is she's a monster. I think she's done 26 marathons, 13 Ironmans, and 15 triathlons. You should see this woman's thighs, and calves. It's just incredible. And I think I did run the short one because I was still worried about my knees, and not because of my weight or what it had been, but because of my age, and it's like I didn't want to put all of that weight. So I think 10K is probably the highest I'm going to go.
Beta breakers.
I've seen the beta breakers, and that's a little bit too much for me. A little too much nudity, and I took my kids to Beta Breakers a few years ago, and my son, counted the number of penises he sees. Great. Not that there's anything wrong with nudity, but and I certainly wouldn't be nude. Then I see someone else had a question.
What
Yes.
made you choose? I mean, for myself.
Yes.
What made you choose to lose the weight or to?
Well, I had been thinking about it for a long time, and I kind of fell prey to everything that people said. I mean, when I was 18, I was overweight, and I remember, not much, but slightly. And I remember then my mother at first told me, as long as you lose the weight before you're 18, it's baby fat. Okay, and then it got changed. As long as you lose the weight before you're 21, it's still baby fat. And then I think I got another one to 25, and then, I kept gaining weight. Then I went on the yo-yo, like so many of us did. Yes, I would lose 50 pounds, then I would gain 75. And I kept doing that back and forth, over the years, and lost track about how much weight. And then in my head, I would say things like, oh, when I was younger, I'll never be more than 200 pounds. I'll never be more than 250 pounds. I'll never be more than 300 pounds. And I kept on going up. And then I had this thing, Marlon Brando, because I read that Marlon Brando, I think at one time, before his death, weighed close to 500 pounds. So I said, I vowed I'd never get to the Marlon Brando weight. Now, I don't know whether I did or not. I think I got close. But, I think I more started to care about myself and was able to do something about it. Not that I didn't always care about myself. And let me just say, lots of therapy too. Do we want to show a few pictures? Okay, I brought to have it a multimedia experience. And I used to hate pictures of myself, and I still kind of do, but there's some pretty bad pictures here too. But yeah, so I got to the point, and then I also, for me, I realized I couldn't do it myself. Okay, so this is me probably at my heaviest weight, and this was, okay, I have to floss a little bit. This was at the opening of This Is It, the Michael Jackson film down in LA that I got to go on a junket to, which was bittersweet because, of course, Michael had passed, but the number of celebrities there was just amazing. And, I know I was I'd stopped weighing at this point. I know that I was over 400 pounds, but I don't know how much. And I actually did the age ride for 2 years with a bunch of plus-size women. And this is me in a most flattering shot. And I think the remarkable thing about that is people recognize me from the back. I just thought that was, even if you do recognize me from my butt, please just wait until you pass me to say something. Or say you saw my number or something. And I think the hardest thing with that is I thought I can't put my big butt on these skinny tires, but I did do it and walked a lot too because there were hills that I just couldn't climb. Okay, so this this is last year, this 2014, me riding my bike close to here, and you can see the difference.
The before and after.
Yeah, that's a good before. So yeah, this is me at my heaviest, and this is the top of the stairs at Coit Tower. Me doing my Rocky thing. Punching meat now. And I actually found, this is really good, I found this fanny pack on the street, and they have piles of stuff to give away, and so the guy was putting it out, and I'm like, oh, I want that, I want a fanny pack, because it's big, you can put stuff in there.
And your Warrior shirt.
And my Warriors shirt, yeah, from 2014, which was free, because I signed up to get a subscription to the Oakland Tribune. That's my other thing. I like to get as many free things as possible. I like to pay for stuff, Oh, I can sign up and get this. Was there another question here? Yes.
What sorts of issues preoccupy your thoughts these days?
Well, I think that the stuff that's in the news, it's very disheartening. I think to know that racism still exists, and Eric was talking about tolerance when we were talking about LGBT folks, but racial intolerance and racism still exists. So that's very disheartening. The amount of violence that we have in this country, that it's a different, I mean, the violence did exist when I was growing up, but it's a very different culture now. And, you know, I try to have the balance between wanting my children to be safe and not wanting them to walk around in fear. But the reality is they don't have the same freedom and liberty of going out as I did when I was growing up. So those things preoccupy me. And that, you know, my son in particular, who is an 11-year-old black kid, is not looked as, I mean, he can't wear his little hoodie because someone's going to think he's a thug. And I have to tell him, you know, he's got these, he's a boy, and like a, you know, a lot of boys stereotypical, wants to play with guns, and, you know, I got to tell him, you can't do that publicly. You cannot play even with your yellow and orange fake Uzi because someone is going to think it's real and you're going to be a threat. So I think that that's the thing that those sorts of things preoccupy me. But in terms of a message of hope, you know, I try to preach to my children and get them to embody that, you know, they in turn cannot be intolerant of other people, whoever it is. Because I see those, and you know, it's like we need to learn how to embrace differences and respect differences and not expect people to have a melting pot. That's not what it's about. But to be welcoming and open and tolerant. And just because I am doing something differently than the way you're doing it, you have to be violent towards me? No. You know, I can respect. There's all sorts of things that people do that I'm like, you know, I don't get that, you know, in terms of music. But I get their freedom to do it as long as it doesn't trample on my rights. So those are things. Good question. Any other questions? Yes?
How do you feel as an African-American, out, proud, lesbian, now? Because certainly, I think you and I share some stories.
Yes.
And pain, and I never thought that I would ever, first of all, see this.
Right.
And participate in this, and have nothing but support from my agency from day one.
Yeah.
So it is amazing.
It is amazing, and you're right. And it's kind of funny because I've been through a lot. When I first started, I started working at CBS in 2001, and then when Newsom allowed for the same-sex marriages, my then partner and I went to get married, and I remember going to my boss, who's the general manager of the station, and saying, I have to go, and I'm going out on my lunch, but I don't know how long this is going to take. I'm going to get married. I'm going to City Hall to get married, is what I told him. He's like, what are you talking about? And the backdrop was that Ruthie, my now wife, who I should say estranged wife, and I were living together, and we had 2 children at that point, and we had parted each other's company. We both worked in the city, and then later she called me at like 11:30 and said, do you want to go down to City Hall and get married today? And I said, oh, I'm sorry, I have lunch plans with my friend Heath. And so I can't go. And she said, she disputes this. She said, you stupid ass, I don't know how long this is going to last, so we got to go now. But you can cancel and reschedule with Heath, which I did. So, but I went into that thinking, I never thought that day would come. You know, in terms of civil rights for folks, I never thought that. And in the background of Ruthie, who is African American, but whose father was African American, and whose mother was white, at a time when they were prevented from getting married until post Loving versus Virginia. And there were some people, as we are continuing to have the battle for civil rights and marriage equality, who don't get that marriage equality means that. It's regardless of race, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of sexual identity. So walked into that and did end up getting married that day, only to have that marriage dissolved by the court. But then got in and got married before Prop 8, which also surprised me. I never would have thought in quote-unquote liberal California that people would vote to stop the equal rights of people. That just thoroughly blew me away. Coupled with the fact that I think that there was an unfair comparison at that time, that people were saying that the reason that it lost was because black churches were more homophobic and that they were rallying people, which wasn't true. I mean, the reality is that homophobia, unfortunately, is pervasive. And I think that the way that equality happens and tolerance happens is people get to know you. So there's no way that hate can exist when people, and intolerance can exist when people don't get to know you. So you have to have that. So yeah, I think you're right. We do share a lot. I'm surprised we're here, but I'm also surprised in some ways that we haven't gone further. But we have got, I mean, for me, the marriage equality in terms of LGBT folks has gone a lot quicker for LGBT folks than it did for folks of color. But now I think we're on the path, and it's going to be interesting as the Supreme Court makes the decision. But it's beyond that. It's beyond laws. It's really about tolerance and people accepting, and it's really about us getting to know people, just like the civil rights movement based on race was. It was like, a lot of it had to do with fear. It's like, I grew up in the South. Black people didn't associate with white people. I mean, either way when I grew up. Brown versus Board of Education, which integrated the schools, was 1954. My school was not integrated until 1968. I was in 6th grade. So I don't care what the laws say, you still have to have tolerance and you still have to have some people enforce it. Alabama last year struck down their laws forbidding same-sex marriage, and then the Supreme Court judge said, we're not going to allow it. So it's got to be a holistic thing, and I think we're coming to that, and we're coming to that a lot quicker. So I think even if the Supreme Court rules in a certain way, it's still going to take more and more people being tolerant and accepting. And I think that this generation, what is this generation called? Jordan, what's your generation called? Are you a millennial? Are you?
I'm not sure, actually.
Okay, I'm not sure. I know I'm a baby boomer. And I know that there was Gen X, and then there's millennials and all this sort of stuff, so I don't know. But I know that when they do surveys and they talk about tolerance, that this current generation, it's like, I don't understand what the problem is. I heard a story this morning. I went to hear another woman do a keynote speech at the Alameda County Food Bank, and she talked about her daughter who teaches in St. Louis and was teaching 5-year-olds. And this 5-year-old kid, she asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, well, I want to be president of the United States. And she said, why do you think you want to be president of the United States? And he said, because I thought that's what black guys did when they grew up. So this 5-year-old kid, that's all he has seen was an African-American president. Most of us never thought we would see an African-American president, never think that we're going to see maybe even a woman president, and maybe we will. So the perspective is shifting, I think, as we go. And people are thinking that it's not weird, and they're seeing more people. When I grew up, I never saw anybody with 2 mommies or 2 daddies. I never knew the people that I knew who were in the LGBT communities. They were on the down low, and they would whisper, and they would never say, oh, this is Sally and her partner. That's Sally and her friend, Sally and her roommate, who shared the same room, even though they're grown people. But these things happen. But good question. Yeah. Anything else? Do I have time for one more piece, or should I? Okay. And then let's see. Okay, so I'll give you a choice. No, I won't give you a choice. I'll just do one. I had pieces, and you can find these all online, about Michael Sam, who was the first out player in the NFL, and I have a piece about Robin Roberts, who I was so proud when she came out and how she came out, and And I also feel that the one thing I'll say is that I'm coming out constantly. The end of my story, after I told my boss that I was going to go and get married on that day, is that I did get married, and my news organization, KPIX, covered me. And I was in all of their promos as this whole same-sex marriage thing was unfolding. But the number of people who came into my office who basically said to me, I had no idea you were a lesbian, was astounding to me. Because I thought that I was out. I didn't hide it. I had pictures of myself and my partner there. But they only knew it because they saw it on the news, that I was on the news. And I was featured in the promos. In some ways, I was like heartened by that because, they're like, I don't know any more about you than you know about me. Maybe they didn't know that I had kids or whatever, but I think that you don't just come out once. You come out, over and over again in whatever your identities are. So the last piece that I'm going to read you is one of my favorite pieces that I wrote, and it was about Martin Luther King. And I wrote this piece, and I thought that I had met Martin Luther King, and then my father, told me that I had not. So you will see this. But which is why I'm writing my memoirs, because it's going to be as I remember it, not as it actually was. So this is called MLK Day. Martin Luther King Day is much more than a holiday. I often wonder what those who didn't know the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King think of the man and the holiday. I don't have that problem. So this is 4 years ago. I am a 54-year-old lesbian of African descent who grew up in Huntsville, Alabama. My parents strategized and marched with King. I learned about civil disobedience and protest from them when I was 4 years old. I heard them talk of engaging in sit-ins at segregated lunch counters, and they explained to me that we would not be buying new clothes from segregated stores in town on Easter because Dr. King, in conjunction with the local churches, had organized a boycott. If we couldn't shop at these stores by entering in the front door, then we wouldn't patronize them. Easter clothes and accoutrements were a very big deal among a lot of African Americans in the South. It was the time when we put on our finest clothes. We all got entirely new outfits, the whole regalia, including underwear, shoes, purses, hats, and gloves. So it was a very big deal to forego this. In fact, the organizing strategy was to wear blue jeans that Easter Sunday in 1962. Now, little black girls did not wear pants to church anywhere in the 1960s, much less